Good morning, ladies, gents and Pikachus. Welcome back to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, once again we'll be breaking this thing down verse by verse into factual, logical statements in English so that we can understand who or what is Allah, what does he mean by the contents of this book, and more importantly for us as non-believers today, how does this affect our lives in the world right now? So as I always do before I get started, I'm going to tell you now, if you have any doubts as to my factual accuracy, please first buy, translate and read one of these, an Arabic Quran, not an English one, an Arabic one, not Quran.com either, an Arabic paper Quran, that's the only accurate, divinely inspired word of Allah, this. And after having done so, you'll recognise everything I'm about to tell you now from here is 100% true and accurate of the words of Allah himself and what Muslims believe today. So, if you've been keeping up with this series, you'll remember that we've been going through AL-NIISA, the Book of Women, and we have covered such things as procuring yourself some orphans and slaves and prisoners of war, putting them to work in the community as prostitutes for your profiteering, or having them as slaves and sex pets so that you don't have to fall into sexual sin, in the words of Allah. And as long as you do that and you kill them when they're being bad and you don't let them accuse other people of beating them up, harassing them or gang raping them, even if they have, then Allah says you are treating them fairly. So we'll continue where we left off from that with verse 22. Verse 22. Do not have sex with your father's wife, nor his slaves. Unless he passes them to your right hand, of course. They are hateful, sinful, and living indecently. Indecently. End of verse. So, this is going to be a fun episode. So, in carrying on with Allah's great tradition of treating women like pieces of property, now he's saying very clearly, do not have sex with your father's wife, nor his slaves. That would be bad. Unless he says you can. So, once again, we are seeing Allah demonstrate that he thinks women are like toys. You know, oh, I'm bored of this toy, you can have it, and you can have sex with it, it's fine. Remember, they're hateful, sinful, and living indecently, unless the father says it's okay, then they're fine. Obviously, they're still going to get treated poorly by the rest of your household, who are not going to be pleased with the introduction of these women. But who cares about them? As long as you are happy, O Muslim, as long as you're making money, or your father is making money off of the sale of his old, used up sex slaves, then everything's fine. This is Allah's version of treating them fairly. And we move on. 23. Forbidden also are your mothers, your daughters and sisters, your wives' mothers and sisters, the children of your daughters and sisters, and of your wives. Unless they are no longer in marriages, of course, then there shall be no fault in you should you have sex with them, for it is considered, Allah decrees he is oft forgiving, and there is no indecency or sin upon you, O Muslim. Presumably it's only upon them, so they could be punished for this, but you're okay. Imagine having to have a rule in your holy book that says, don't have sex with your children. Don't have sex with your mother. Don't have sex with the mother of your sister or wife, or, you know, the daughter of your mother or wife. You know, it's just, this is crazy to me. Why would you need to tell people this in a holy book? Like, compare this to the gospel, which says all the things about marriage that you'd expect. And it's like, treat your wife nicely and she's an equal partner to you and all the rest of it. No, there's none of that in here. The marital rules of Islam is don't have sex with your children or your sisters, or the children of your sisters. And Allah decrees that if you do, it's bad, apart from if they're not married, and then it's okay. And if there's any sin or indecency, it's upon the women. You're fine. And that's treating them fairly, according to Allah. And if you don't believe me, buy, read and translate an Arabic Quran like this, which is the word of Allah. Because remember, Allah doesn't speak in English, and neither does he use websites. So you'll only find it in the Quran, which is this. I'm so glad we're getting to the end of this series. This just creeps me out now. So anyway, we carry on. 24. Only married women who are slaves in your own hand are considered chaste for you, and to prevent you from fornication. But you can pay for them as for their bodily pleasures, and in doing so no sin will be upon you, because it is Allah's wisdom that you treat them this way, and it is fair. So if we break this down, Only married women who are slaves in your right hand are considered chaste for you. So what he's saying there is don't nick the sex slaves off your brothers or off other people and just take them as wives before you've paid for them, because that would be bad. That wouldn't be considered chaste. Chaste is if you just have a sex slave of your own that you found with your own pillage party and took fair and square, and then you made her become an Islamic woman through her slavery and then had her as an extra wife. That's considered chaste. And the endeavour of having these women as wives at all, despite the fact that they're still exactly the same as sex slaves, they don't go up in rank, they get no status from this, it's to stop you from fornicating, O Muslim. So, fornication, bad. Raping and pillaging and having orphans as sex slaves and making them your toys as wives, good. That's Allah's treating women fairly. Then he finishes off by saying, in doing so, for your bodily pleasures, there is no sin upon you, because Allah says it is his wisdom. This is Allah's great wisdom that he's telling you here, O Muslims. Listen well, O Muslims, if you want the wisdom of the divine creator of the universe, it is this. Don't fornicate, just take sex slaves and make them your wives and put them in your household, despite the fact that your actual proper wives are not going to be too happy about this. You literally couldn't make this up to be any worse than it is. I'm glad we're getting to the end of this series as well, because I can have a bit of a laugh with it now, but realistically, this is disgusting, make no mistake about it. Allah is a disgusting, filthy pervert, and so are Muslims who think this is okay. And so, by the way, are the filthy Muslims who deny this is the case, and they deny their own Quran, because they know we're going to criticise it. Of course we're going to criticise it. It is absolutely just rank and disgusting. But anyway, we move on to verse 25. If you cannot take for a wife a believing woman, then make a believer and wife of your slave woman, whom Allah did put in your right hand. And if he gives you permission, you can buy a slave from another and make them believe in only Allah and pay them a wage that is fair to prevent your fornication. If they refuse, they should be put to torment, but only half the torment that a good Muslim wife would be. And so they and ye shall both fear only Allah, and this will be considered a patience to make you a good one, because Allah is all forgiving. So if we break this down, if you cannot take for a wife a believing woman, if you can't find yourself a decent wife, is what Allah is saying here, and one who believes in Islam and only obeys Allah, then and only then can you take the wife of your slave. So you've got slaves who are married, this is suggesting, and if you can't find a decent wife and you're jealous that your slave's wife is pretty and you want her, you can steal her off the slave husband, and you can make her your wife. She could be like wife number 7 for you and not a wife of his anymore. And this isn't considered breaking up a marriage, because obviously because he's an infidel, he's not a Muslim, doesn't really count anyway. Even though they're already married, that doesn't matter, because they weren't married in front of Allah. Infidels don't have marriages. Infidels have no rights. That's what he's making clear here. And the reason this is okay is because Allah has given them to your right hand. The fact that you possess them as slaves means they're now your property. Allah has allowed them to come into your property as slaves, and that is his wisdom and mercy. Pay them a wage that is fair to prevent your fornication. So once you've done this, you have to pay her a wage to not secretly be having sex with her proper husband behind your back, because that would be indecent. Not you having sex with someone else's wife who is also your sex slave. That isn't indecent as long as you pay her. And taking a wife who is already married to someone else, that isn't indecent either. And this is Allah's wisdom and mercy that he's talking about here. So it's absolutely true and accurate, and all Muslims must obey this and not argue with it. Because remember what happens if you disobey? Off with your head, you're dead, and you're not worshipping enough. And then the last line says, so they and ye shall both fear only Allah, and this will be something that makes you a more patient and a good Muslim, because Allah is all forgiving. I don't think he understands what forgiving means. That's got nothing to do with forgiveness. This is all to do with stopping you from fornicating, O Muslim, because obviously you do nothing but fornicate for your entire life. So you need like 1,000,000 wives. You need like a little harem of half a dozen wives, including the wives of your slaves. And you just pay them. Allah, come here a minute. Come here, Allah. Allah, I don't know whether you're aware, if you have to pay someone to have sex with you, that's not your wife. That is a prostitute. Just because you have them living in your house and you call them your wife, you're paying them to have sex with you. So it's not. Okay then, Allah, fine. Allah says, he knows all and I know nothing. I will never understand his writings in full, so I'm wrong. And I'm also an infidel who knows not the ways of Allah. So, okay, fine. In that case, even though you're paying these women to have sex with you, O Muslims, they're not prostitutes. They're definitely legitimate wives, even though they're already married to someone else who you've made a slave and you've just stolen them off that person because you couldn't find a good woman who was a Muslim to marry you. For some reason, I don't know why that would be. Perhaps it's because you're a disgusting pervert with absolutely zero moral fibre, and you're living off the wife of someone else who you've made a slave, who is completely against this idea. Maybe that's the reason you can't find a good wife. But anyway, Allah says it's okay, and he will forgive you for this, and there'll be no fault or blame or sin on you. It'll all be on her, so it's fine. Because Allah is all forgiving. That's what this means, and we move on to the last verse, number 26. These things are true, for Allah is all-knowing, and guides you into the traditions of your fathers, and will relent upon you in these ways, for it is by his wisdom that you do these. End of verse. And so we reach the final verse in which no woman is mentioned, and it's just a list of excuses to the Muslim man why this is okay, there's no sin in it, it's considered wisdom and mercy, Allah will forgive you anyway, even if you feel bad about it, so definitely go and do it. And I think the unsaid, between the lines implication here is, O Muslim, if you're not married, you're not going to be producing sons for the Holy Jihad, so get to it. Whether it's the wife of someone else who's a slave, whether it's your friend or your brother's slave, as long as it's not your mother, your daughter, your sister, or your sister's children, or your children, it's fair game, as long as you pay them and you ask Allah to ratify this as a marriage and not as just you having sex with one of your slaves. And just to make sure they know, you pay the woman to not have sex with her old husband, who is now not her husband anymore. Otherwise, it's a great indecency on her, not on you. There's no fault on you. So, I think we know now, and this is the reason why I gleefully use Getting Jiggy With It as the intro music for this video. It's going to be a short one as well. In summary of this whole page, Allah has no idea what marriage actually means. Allah has no idea what justice actually means. Allah has no idea what decency and indecency actually are and how to separate those two things. In fact, the only thing he has correctly ascribed here is fornication. That's it. So I think we can tell from this, Allah's idea about how marriage and sex works is really, really, really immoral, bad and evil. And actually the only thing he understands is fornication. Well, I'm not surprised at all in this, bearing in mind how much of the Quran of the Muslims we have been reading and what the rest of the commands and things issued within this book to his Muslims describe. This is not nearly the worst. It's not even the worst of the last 2 or 3 episodes. In fact, I feel like this is a joyful moment here where we haven't had anyone punished or killed. We've had someone tormented half as much as what a good wife would be tormented, but they didn't die from it. So Allah is indeed merciful because he's not killing the sex slaves who you've just stolen to make them your sex toys and your extra wives so that you can not have to fornicate so often. Oh dear. So, well, it's going to be a short episode today, isn't it? There's not really a lot of explanation that I can put towards that. There's not a lot that I can add or take away to make you understand it any differently to the words of Allah in his book, the Quran of the Muslims. But I will tell you this. Whoever decided to take this out of the English one and write Quran.com in a more romanticised fashion and not use the words of Allah, boy done good, because if you use the words of Allah, it just reveals how disgusting and perverted he really is and was when he wrote this. And how today, even today's Muslims who claim they're devout and they're following Allah's word, the fact that they don't follow this bit and they've changed it and then told us they haven't, we can tell secretly they know this is sick and disgusting and immoral and perverted and wrong. And they're trying to make out like what they've corrected it with, that's actually Allah's real word. And this isn't going to be in there, but I can guarantee you, if you are honest Muslims, you know This Arabic Quran is the word of Allah that's accurate and true and divinely inspired by the creator of the universe in Allah's grace and wisdom and mercy. So what you think it is, which is not that, makes you an infidel. If you don't do this, you're a criminal. That's what Allah said earlier. Remember, don't pick and choose verses. Don't change, take away, or hide any of the truths of his verses. And don't insult the religion by saying you're not going to do any of it. Don't have doubts. Don't have any misconceptions that you won't be doing exactly that. So, that's the end of this video. All you Muslims who are not doing that are infidels, and all you Muslims who are doing that are perverts. Thusly, we know 100% of Muslims in their marriages, out of marriages, with sex slaves or not, with orphans or not, whatever they're calling it, are perverts. And that's the end of this video. So, I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. I know I did. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. And if you'd like to get jiggy with more without lies, Islam dies, come back here at 4:15 this afternoon. Until then, have a lovely, lovely morning. God bless you all, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye now. Bye, 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 bye.